When I was going through health anxiety, one of the things that kept my hopes alive and gave me a real path towards healing was hearing other people's stories, hearing their stories of how health anxiety manifested, what sort of things kept it alive, and what they did in order to eventually heal from health anxiety. So, my friends, today I want to share with you a recent health anxiety podcast episode that goes in depth in relation to my own health anxiety journey. I hope you find it inspiring and helpful for you. Remember that you are more than anxiety. Enjoy the episode.
Before we get into this podcast episode, I want to apologize. For the last week, yes, the anxietyguyprograms.com has been under maintenance. We have been updating our programs, so I'd like to offer you 30% off any program with the code FREEDOM30 at anxietyguyprograms.com. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for letting me know about your intent to start the programs. Use the code FREEDOM30, get 30% off at anxietyguyprograms.com. And so this podcast episode is not teachy, it's not learny, it's more so my personal experience, okay? So let's dive into kind of what I went through, how it started, and kind of how I got out of this health anxiety loop, because there's a lot of people right now that are struggling. They're struggling to gain progress. They're struggling to get over their attachment to symptoms and the fear of what may take place in their physical body. I completely get it. I understand. So, just so you know, I do believe that my worries and my anxiety in general started very, very young, right? And of course, when you're a baby or you're growing up and you're very young, it's kind of hard to see the signs. But I do remember, of course, as we all do, looking up to our authority figures, mother, father, and really believing what they were teaching, right? So they were teaching all the time in terms of their behaviors and actions and kind of the way they led us, right? So I could literally sit here and see how my anxiety was unfolding based around the pressure and the worryful approach to every little thing that occurred in our family dynamic, right? What could go wrong? What could go wrong was front and center, whereas what could go right was kind of secondary, right? Okay, and my health anxiety specifically was kind of there, right, mildly in my teenage years, just a little bit, right? In my early 20s. But in my mid 20s is when kind of it all kind of reached beyond the threshold. And I wasn't as anxious about things in the outside. And I was starting to become more anxious about things going on in my body. So were those same symptoms playing out before my health anxiety started? It's possible. It's possible that they were there. But because my fear around what these symptoms meant, and because the panic attacks and anxiety attacks kept my nervous system in high alert, I started to develop health concerns, health anxiety. And the more I analyzed, the more I focused on my symptoms, the more I was afraid of what the symptoms meant, the stronger the symptoms became. And the less attention I was giving to what I was doing, and the more attention I was giving to what was taking place in my body, right? What tends to happen is we tend to fall for these ideas and thoughts that show up in relation to fear of what these symptoms mean, what direction is my physical body going. We tend to fall for that when we are in a very deeply sensitive state. And in my mid-20s, with panic attacks and anxiety attacks, it was it was a very strange time in my life. Really, it was, because, it looked like these things were happening out of the blue, but I could see how I was always in confrontation with other people. I was irritable. I was angry. I was blameful. I felt very guilty. And I'm not going to go into detail with why these things occurred, but I could see how the emotional buildup was happening to the point where my system literally gave me panic attacks because it felt like I couldn't deal with it on my own anymore, if that makes sense. So here's a panic attack to get you out of the situation that you're in, or the situation that you're always fighting against, which was, I was at work every single day. So there's the panic attacks and anxiety attacks. And yeah, I mean, it worked. It really worked. It got me to the emergency room. It got me away from the people that were causing me to feel like I was in conflict with them and the environment. I was in the emergency room, 2-3 days a week, really. Like I said in my books, I got to know the doctors and nurses by their first name. Right? I was there so often. And this seems like a lifetime ago. Now that I'm explaining it to you, it really feels like a lifetime ago. But with that kind of amplification of emotion and symptoms and the dizziness and the feeling like this could not be a panic attack or anxiety attack, maybe there's something wrong with me, they haven't found something yet. So I kept going back again and again and again, doing every test there was. And the conclusion was always the same. And once the conclusion was there that, hey, Dennis, we did all the tests, there's nothing structurally wrong here, I would it was a mixed bag afterwards. It was the feeling of relief, while at the same time, the feeling of confusion, right? And the relief lasted maybe a few hours, maybe a day. And then my sensitive nervous system would kick in again after the doctor visit to bring up certain questions in my mind, right? Like, why is this symptom still there? If they're saying I'm good, why am I still experiencing X symptom, right? Or why do I feel this way, so heavy? Or why do I feel the fatigue? Or why do I feel the fear? There's got to be something wrong here, right? There was that constant loop that went around and around. And as the emotional intensity grew around the fear, another attack would show up, to the point where I developed DPDR. And DPDR is kind of like a protection, it's a protection mechanism where if the nervous system feels under threat and under danger for a lengthy period of time, your system will shut down certain workings of the body in order to focus on the potential threat that may show up. So I developed derealization, where I could touch something, but I didn't know it was real. I would drive, but I didn't know whether I was driving in a dream or I was driving on the highway. Or, along with that came the fuzzy vision, okay, the vision of, fuzziness. It's hard to explain that one. It's not, well, it's kind of like double vision, but it's more so a fuzzy vision, feeling off balance in this vestibular issue. So there were things that developed in relation to DPDR, which was the last straw from the nervous system, right? There's just too many of these overwhelming experiences. Here's DPDR. Let's shut down the emotions. And what happened here was that I started to not feel anymore. This is an aspect of anxiety and health anxiety that a lot of people don't talk about. I was wondering why I had no feelings for my family or my good friends, or when something good happened in my life. Why wasn't I encouraging myself? Why wasn't I feeling excited about something I had accomplished? But not only that, the fear was always there at that point, kind of as a default. right? So there was always this feeling of standing guard with the DPDR and that hypervigilance. So I started to find that this fear and DPDR and all the symptoms, that was normalized from the nervous system, right? It was just, at that point, it was just normal. This is just the way it is. No longer is it a symptom of this, or it's a shifting symptom or a traveling symptom. It was just everything. And when I mean everything, I'm talking about the dizziness, I'm talking about the confusion in mind, the lack of being able to concentrate on one thing, getting very tired and fatigued quickly over little things, and being very irritable, right? Like little things would have set me off very quickly. Oh my God, why is that noise so loud at the cafe that I'm sitting in? I'm never sitting in here again. The interesting thing that connected to this particular chapter in my life was that I was at that point looking for instant gratification more so than I was before. When I was regulated, I could go through my day and not feel like I needed something to feel better, right? But at that point, when the fear and the health anxiety and the DPDR was all normalized, the instant gratification was the very thing that made me still feel alive, right? So this instant gratification went beyond kind of the rewarding feeling that we would normally have. Let me give you an example, okay? Like junk food, okay? It's like my system was so depleted and all I wanted was to feel better now. So what could do that? Food, right? So I was addicted to potato chips. I do believe that there was the salt content in potato chips was also something that my system needed at the time, right? Back then, of course, in potato chip world, the salt isn't the best choice. You know, Himalayan salt, Celtic salt, obviously a lot better for adrenals and such, right? Taking it just a little bit, waking up in the morning, which I did during my recovery. But there was that feeling of, have a cookie, have some potato chips, right? Even have, a glass of beer or something, anything that made me feel better than this hazy world that I was living in back then, right? And it was like a video game, right? I was addicted to the video games, for example, as well. Like, oh, if I can just get to that next level, then I'm going to feel satisfied and I'll be back to normal again. So it was an interesting place where it was like, it was living in a hazy world, needing instant gratification, always standing guard and hypervigilant to what my body could do next or what could go wrong next. And that trickled into everything. Okay, living like that trickled into everything, and I didn't even know what was going on. After a period, I realized that I was very rigid when I was taking a shower. I wasn't relaxed and loose. I was rigid, and I was in my head. What's coming up next? What do I have to do today? This is that kind of thing. And I was like, why am I not enjoying this shower, this nice warm water that's hitting my body, for example? Why am I not driving while being in this present moment? Why am I always looking into the future or blaming something in the past? So that became kind of a default back then. And the things that got me out of that whole thing, honestly, it wasn't overnight, as many of you know. It's not overnight. Okay, don't expect these patterns to kind of resolve overnight. But there needed to be a reconnection with a system that was so afraid to live. And it started with kind of the knowledge part. Okay, so knowledge. I am now aware that my system is sensitized, and instead of trying to make things go away, instead of trying to feel better, I started to listen more. So when I listened, I realized that there are connections happening underneath the level of conscious awareness that was happening all the time. And a lot of times what my body was really doing was asking questions. right? Asking questions. Do we have to move fast through this situation? Is it safe to wake up in the morning, right? Is this the time during shower that we overly focus and plan our day, right? Do we have to be rigid? Do we have to be flexible? So the body was always asking me questions, and it wasn't that I needed to follow what the body was doing. I needed to start leading my body in a gentle, more empathetical, with empathy way. And I had to stop myself from living in fix-it mode, right? Fix it. What pill will take it away? What supplement will take it away? What technique will take it away? Today's book is tomorrow's old book. Every day was another book. I was so knowledgeable about this subject, right? But I couldn't apply because I wasn't in the right mindset. So the mindset is, I am now willing to work with you rather than try to fix you. That's the mindset, right? And then slowly but gradually, what started to happen was anything that my system felt like it was going to go beyond the threshold of what it could handle, I started to replace that with things that kept me below the threshold. Okay? So anything that pushed me beyond, even though it felt better temporarily, I need answers to this, or, I need to get out of this situation, or whatever it is, or that new project, or that sporting event, anything that raised my emotional intensity, I stopped doing. And in the beginning, it felt very boring. But over time, my nervous system started to center and ground itself. And it started to realize that it could let up some of the symptoms that were there because of overprotection mode. Okay? So that's very important, that you recognize the things that you can control that are overstimulating you, right? Making your system work harder than it wants to, and replace those with things that keep you below the threshold. What else I started to do was I started to change some of the habits. When I woke up in the morning, often I would have the urge to go on my phone to check WhatsApp or my email, right? And instead, I laid in bed for another 20 minutes. Yes, thoughts would occur, but every single time a fearful thought occurred, I came back to my breath. I came back to this moment. I came back to what was around me in that very moment in my room, and I gave my system the signal of, it's safe to wake up gradually. And then I would sit at the edge of my bed, and I would take 3 deep breaths, right? And then I would go and make lemon water, which I continue to this day, warm lemon water, okay? And I went about my mornings differently. Okay, and then I would go for a brisk walk rather than working out so hard in order to gain as much muscle as I can to keep up with the world and all those Instagram influencers. No, I had to stop living there. That was too much. So I went for a brisk walk, 15 minutes, and even though it didn't feel like a workout, right, I always kept below the threshold. Okay, if it pushed me too much, I stayed below it, because I wanted my nervous system to find a new baseline. This is the baseline, right? And we don't need to go up there anymore or live down there. We don't have to live like an emotional roller coaster anymore. And then if there were things that would push me above my threshold and make me anxious, right, this sort of thing, caught up, hypervigilant, I made sure that before I went there, I communicated safety to my body. Now, I did that mentally in ways where it is safe to enter in this environment. I did that through my identity. We are no longer the anxious identity. The person that is approaching this experience is different than who he was before. We can be real now. We don't have to live in performance mode, because anxious people always feel like they have to perform, right? If I perform for other people, they're going to like me. I'm going to have more friends. And the more friends I have, right, the more fulfilled I'm going to feel. That's coming from your lower self or inner protector. So if you want to heal health anxiety, Indirectly, because we're healing this indirectly. If you're trying to heal health anxiety directly, you never will. Meaning, if you're trying to fix a symptom, if you're trying to make a symptom go away, it has to be done indirectly. So we stop the performance, and we feel like now we can open up around people, for example, right? Instead of holding ideas in and always smiling, hey, I don't feel like smiling right now, right? I don't feel like talking right now. I feel like being quiet. And so you're quiet, but you're real. And so your system's going, whoa, this is very different, right? Because performing keeps you above the threshold. Okay? So if I was tired, I was tired. If I was fearful, I was fearful. If I was excited, I was excited. If I was just, wanting to lay around, I laid around. But I never tried to do things that I thought would help me with my anxiety or health anxiety, if that makes sense. Right? That's a performance. I get up in the morning. What are the 10 things I have to do for health anxiety? In the afternoon, who do I need to talk to? What do I need to do in order to help my anxiety? In the evening, how do I rearrange? This is all a performance. So yes, there are routines and rituals that you need to have in your life, but you need to do them from a different place, right? From a place of non-performing, if that makes sense, right? And then what gradually started to happen was the symptoms subsided, and I never thought they would subside. Honestly, in a million years, I never thought I could heal DPDR, health anxiety. And the interesting thing was I needed to take a big leap, and that leap from one side of the bridge to the other was that I needed to leave my body alone. This is a part that's really key and very, very interesting. I didn't need to be in control of my body. My body was so intelligent that all it wanted was for me to get out of the way. And when I mean get out of the way, it was more so about trying to think about the solutions, right? How do I think about this? What puzzle piece do I put together? How do I solve this or get to the root of this? All right. And so I stopped all that. Anytime I tried to apply some kind of mentalness towards my health anxiety, I stopped because I knew that got me nowhere. It just kept me more anxious. So I needed to learn, and we do this through surrender sessions on YouTube. Okay, you can go to those videos, or the health anxiety program where I show you step by step how to apply these things. Okay, and remember the code is freedom30 at anxietyguyprograms.com, but you need to make sure that you get out of the way so that the intelligence in your body takes over and starts to dissipate or subside these symptoms because it now feels like there's no need to overprotect. Okay. So that happened, and eventually I started to feel like I created a lot of distance between me and my anxious self. I didn't feel like I needed to be that person anymore. And as time went on, I started to trust more and more and more that my body could heal itself, and my mind doesn't have to be overactive, and my emotions don't have to be like a roller coaster, and I could do boring things and actually enjoy them. And that doesn't mean living in a cave or like a monk. You still enjoy your life, but you live it from not a place of performance anymore, but from a place of truth. And that is the key, my friends. And those are just a few keys there that I wanted to share with you and give you just a bit of my experience. If you can relate to anything that I'm going through, I want you to know that you can heal this. You can recover from this. And I know you've heard that before, but I really want that to speak to you. This is healable. But I also recommend maybe listening to this episode a few times because I've been where you are right now, and I know how confusing it is. And I will say that every tiny step that you take, your nervous system notes down. So don't think that just because you're not, there yet, that you're not recovering. You are. Every small step makes a massive difference in the big picture. And 6 months from now, 8 months from now, a year from now, I want you to be able to look back and go, man, I remember what it was like to be that anxious person, and now I'm more so centered and grounded in who I truly am. And I put the rope down, and I've let go of control, and I no longer need the certainty that I once did about my body. I can live in a state of uncertainty and make that my friend. And I say this very often. It's about making peace with peace, because too many anxious people are at war with peace. Every single time they get a moment to themselves, or a moment where there's silence or something not happening that's overstimulating, they feel like they need to keep distracting themselves because their symptoms are so strong. Well, I want you to know that it's safe to make peace with that discomfort. Okay? And the more you do, the faster you're going to heal. I love you from the bottom of my heart. I hope this spoke to you. Remember that you are more than anxiety. Head over to anxietyguyprograms.com. The Health Anxiety Recovery Program is there waiting for you. Use the code for 30% off, Freedom30. The code is Freedom30 at anxietyguyprograms.com. If this spoke to you, please share it with someone in need. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for joining me. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining me on another powerful episode of the Health Anxiety Podcast Show. Make sure to subscribe so you don't ever miss another episode, which comes out every Saturday morning PST time. Remember, you're not alone on this journey, and there are resources available to support you. If you're looking for a comprehensive program to help you overcome health anxiety for good, be sure to check out the Health Anxiety Program at theanxietyguy.com. A step-by-step program designed to empower you with the tools and strategies that you need to reclaim control over your health, mental well-being, and your life. And for those of you who enjoy diving into the written word, I have authored some important books for anyone suffering from the clutches of anxiety. You can find them on Amazon, where I share my wisdom and experience to guide you towards a life free from the grips of anxiety. Thank you again for tuning in. Remember that you are more than anxiety, and you have the will, the strength, and the insights within you to overcome this. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.